Alright, it's Roger with igadgetgeek, and today I kind of have a shootout video or a comparison video between some of the top phones on AT&T. Today we're going to be kind of doing just a short, quick comparison between the iPhone 5, the new LG Optimus G, and the Galaxy S3. Now these are probably two of the top Android phones and of course the new iPhone, all on AT&T. Now all three of these do retail for $199 with a 2-year contract, and all three of these do support HSPA Plus and 4G LTE. Now the first thing we're going to look at is of course size comparison. On the iPhone 5 you have a 4-inch display, on the LG you have a 4.7, and on the Samsung Galaxy S3 you have a 4.8-inch display. Now of course body size, the LG Optimus G and the Galaxy S3 are very similar in size. The LG is a little more squared off than the Galaxy S3, but as far as thickness, height, and width, they are pretty close. And I would say on width, I'd say they're pretty much identical. The S3 is a little bit taller than the LG, but they both do run Android 4.0.4 Ice Cream Sandwich. Now the iPhone 5, of course, runs the latest version of Apple's iOS. And of course it is made up of glass and aluminum, and the LG is a Gorilla Glass front. Feels like an aluminum bezel, and this back, I'm not 100% sure, but it feels like glass. If it's not glass, it's a very hardened plastic. Been very impressed with the build quality of that one. And of course the S3 too has Gorilla Glass on the front and the removable battery door. Of the three of these, the Galaxy S3 is the only one that you can actually remove the battery. The LG Optimus G and the iPhone 5 do not have removable battery. But of course with both of the Androids you do get the option of actually expanding your storage with a micro SD card slot. On the 16 gig iPhone 5 there is no expansion slot. We're going to go ahead and take a look at a benchmark test. Now this is a cross-platform benchmark test that I like to use. It is called Geekbench 2, and I've used it on several of my other reviews. So what I'm going to do first is go into each one of these and make sure I have no applications running in the background. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and lock Geekbench 2 on each one of these. Starting with the iPhone 5, it is the new Apple A6 clocked at 1.29 gigahertz. It is a dual-core processor with just over a gig of RAM. The LG Optimus G is a Qualcomm ARM7 1.5 gigahertz quad-core processor. They rated at 2 gigs of RAM, but here with this it's showing 1.78 gigabytes. The Galaxy S3 is a dual-core 1.5 gigahertz processor. They rated at 2 gigs of RAM. As you can see here, it has 1.62 gigabytes available. So I'm going to go ahead and run these Geekbench scores, and we'll take a look at the results. Okay, these all three have finished running the benchmark. As you can see, the iPhone 5 with its dual-core processor scored 1457. The other dual-core processor here, the Samsung Galaxy S3, scored a 1426. And the only quad-core processor here scored a 2041. Now, it's to be expected, the S3 and the iPhone 5, this is, of course, the US AT&T version of the Samsung Galaxy S3, which is a dual-core. It is not the international quad-core version. I do not have that one at my disposal, so I cannot speak on its benchmark scores. But here in the US, the iPhone 5 and the S3 are both dual-core processors, and they do score right about the same. Of course, the brand new LG Optimus G with its quad-core processor, of course, benchmarks a little higher, and so it should. It has twice as many cores. So let's go ahead and back on out of this. Now for the last test I like to run, we're going to have to set the iPhone 5 aside. This is mainly just for Android, and it is the Quadrant Standard. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and run this Quadrant Standard on both of these Android devices to give you guys an idea of what those scores are. Okay, these have finished. As you can see, the dual-core Samsung Galaxy S3 scored a 5052 and the quad-core LG scored a 6114. So take those numbers for what they are. Go ahead and lock all these devices. Now, I've had a lot of people ask me, what should I get? Should I get the new iPhone 5 or should I get the S3 or the Optimus or this Android device or that Android device? You know, telling people which device they should buy is such a hard thing because they are so totally different. It's like trying to compare an apple and an orange, if you were. Now, I can't personally recommend one over the other. I'm lucky enough to get to use both of these great devices, the Android operating system as well as Apple's iOS. If you're just entering the smartphone market, never had one before, you have a tough decision in front of you. Now, of course, if you have already bought into one ecosystem or the other, like if you have a whole bunch of Apple apps, you may want to stick with an iPhone so that you don't lose all those apps you've already purchased. There too, if you've bought into the Android ecosystem and bought a lot of Android apps on a previous phone, you may not want to switch over to the Apple ecosystem. You may want to stay with Android to keep all of those apps. Like I said, all three of these handsets retail for $200 on AT&T with a 2-year contract. And any one of the three you purchase, they're an excellent device. We have come so far in recent years in the technology jammed into these small portable computers that it's just amazing. I can't say enough good things about all three of these devices, any one of which you would be happy with. Personally, I tend to rotate between multiple different phones on a daily basis. If I had to pick just one, I don't think I could do that. So in short, in ending, I can't really give one ultimate recommendation of a phone over another. They are all so good. I know that sounds kind of like a cop-out, not an actual direct answer, but honestly, they are both so good in so many different ways. With Android, you get a lot more customization built right into it. With the Apple ecosystem, you have some great built-in features like iMovie, the Pages, and the iCloud. All of those services work really well, along with, like in my instance, I have an Apple TV. It works really well with the Apple TV, sharing content across, onto my large screen TV and everything. Okay, that's been my comparison video between the AT&T iPhone 5, the AT&T LG Optimus G, and the AT&T Samsung Galaxy S3. And this has been Roger with iGadgetGeek.